Indian government at all levels announces welfare schemes for a cross section of the society from time to time. These schemes could be either central, state specific or a joint collaboration between the center and the states. In this section, we have attempted to provide as an easy and single point access to information about several welfare schemes of the government and their various aspects including eligible beneficiaries, type of benefits, scheme details. These programs provide wide-ranging benefits in important fields such as education, vocational training and rehabilitation, financial assistance for specific needs of the disabled. Specifically for this purpose, this unit represents compilation of all the relevant information about various programs which are meant for the disabled. It further stresses the sources of availability of materials for the visually impaired by providing a comprehensive list of materials and its contact details which they should undertake in this regard. A scheme is a plan or arrangement involving many people which is made by a government or other organization. The ministries of Government of India have come up with various schemes from time to time. These schemes could be either central, state specific or joint collaboration between the center and the state. The scheme of integrated education of the disabled scheme launched in 1974. It aims to provide educational opportunities for the moderately disabled children in general schools and to facilitate their retention. The scheme provides for actual expenses on books and stationery, uniforms, transport allowance in case of blind children, escort allowance for severely disabled children with lower extremity disability and actual cost of equipment. Besides these provisions for teachers' salary, facilities to students in terms of board and lodging allowance, cost of removal of architectural barriers and provision of resource room are also available under this scheme. The Government of India recognizes education as a powerful instrument of empowering persons with disabilities. The scheme provides one special teacher for every 8 disabled children, community involvement and a resource room in a cluster of 8 to 10 schools. The DPED, that is District Primary Education Program, has had a powerful impact on integrating disabled children. The scheme was initially launched in select clusters and blocks. It has now been expanded to more blocks and districts in the country. The advantage of this scheme is that it takes care of all areas from identification, assessment, enrollment and provision of appliance to total integration of disabled children in schools with resource support, teacher training and parental counseling. Like many other schemes, this is the joint program of the Government of India and 5 UN agencies, that is ILO, UNDP, UNESCO, UNFPA, UNICEF, has launched the interventions of DPEP. UN agencies like UNDP and UNICEF have initiated several interventions for the special children. To quote from the Country Report 2003, under the District Primary Education Program, a World Bank funded program which covers 271 districts in 24 states of the country, special attention has been paid to children with disabilities. This has resulted in 3,50,000 additional children enrolling in schools. The Integrated Education Program for Disabled Children, that is IEDC, benefits 1 lakh children. The children covered by the program are provided scholarships, uniforms, books and transport facilities to get to school. Launching of IEDC had led to a pedagogical movement in teaching children with disabilities along with other children in mainstream schools. To ensure that children with disabilities have fair access to higher and technical education, 3% seats in educational institutions have also been reserved for them. The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment provides 500 scholarships to students pursuing their studies at post-school level. Braille books, talking books and teaching and learning materials of education of children with special needs. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is an attempt to universalize elementary education through community ownership of the school system and to provide useful and relevant elementary education for all children in the 6 to 14 years age group by 2010. This called for formulation of context specific guidelines within the overall framework by the states and the local need based planning. The focus of the program is on increasing access, enrollment and retention of all children as well as improving the quality of education. Specific allocation of funds for integrating each child with disability as per proposal in a definite step to promote their education. Various interventions envisaged for education of children with special needs under SSA are creating awareness, making necessary infrastructure for planning and management, early detection and identification, functional and formal assessment, educational placement, preparation of individualized educational plan, provision of suitable aids and appliances, teacher training, resource support, strengthening of special schools, removal of architectural barriers and monitoring and evaluation. Understanding and accommodating students with disability has become a central focus for higher education. A study done by the National Center for Promotion of Employment for Disabled People revealed that just 1.2% of the 3.6 lakh disabled youth in the country had access to higher education, and the country's higher educational system is not accessible to 98.8% of its disabled youth, and the situation needs to be improved. Many students experiencing disability in many campuses or universities are viewed as different in ways that fails to affirm diversity or to facilitate their inclusion. In this background, the University Grants Commission, that is UGC, while its policy paper on education in the 9th 5-year plan has stated that persons with disability should not be ignored in the higher education system. It has recommended development of special education teacher preparation program, teacher preparation in special education, that is STEPC, and also a scheme to provide special assistance to disabled persons, that is higher education for persons with special needs, HEPSN, to facilitate better accessibility in higher education. TEPSI arose out of the recognition that coverage of children with disabilities in the formal school system was less than 5%. To make up for this huge discrepancy, over 1 lakh specially trained teachers were required over a period of 10 years to cater to the educational needs of disabled children in schools. To make this practicable, it was felt that B.Ed and M.Ed courses needed to be introduced in universities and colleges. With TEPSI, the UGC supports selected university departments and colleges of education which offer special education. HEPSN is an extremely comprehensive scheme to promote higher education for the disabled. It has essentially three components. The first was establishment of disability units in various universities and colleges in the country to facilitate admission of the disabled in these institutions and to provide guidance and counseling to them. These units are also meant to assist disabled graduates seek gainful employment. The second was to improve the accessibility of these institutions by making their infrastructure and architecture more disabled friendly. Preference for these one-time grants of rupees 10 lakh per university was to be given those institutions that had enrolled the maximum number of disabled students. The third was the provision of special equipment to augment educational services for disabled students. The scheme has been formulated to help visually challenged permanent teachers to pursue teaching and research with the help of a reader and by using teaching and learning aids by way of providing readers' allowance and funds for purchase of braille books, recorded materials, and the aim is to provide facility to help visually challenged permanent teachers to achieve self-dependence by using various aids of teaching, learning and research. Allowance to visually challenged permanent teachers will be rupees 36,000 per annum and it is to be utilized for payment of reader, purchase of braille books and materials, purchase of recorded materials and any other related or required material equipment for research, teaching and learning. All the visually challenged teachers who are working in colleges of India which are included under sections 2F and 12B of the UGC Act are covered under the scheme. It has been the constant endeavor of the government to provide the disabled persons with aids and appliances at minimum costs. The requirement for providing of aids and appliances which are essential for the social, economic and vocational rehabilitation of the disabled persons has come into sharp focus, particularly after the enactment of the Persons with Disabilities, Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995, which came into force 1996. The scheme aims at helping the disabled persons by bringing suitable, durable, scientifically manufactured, modern, standard aids and appliances within their reach. The estimates according to sample survey conducted by Census of India 2011 data on disability in 2011 indicate that there are about 2.21% of persons with various types of disabilities in the country. Their disabilities restrict the opportunity for their economic and social growth. Many of them are mentally retarded and cerebral palsied and require some aids and appliances to attain the capacity for self-care and independent living. The Ministry of Human Resource Development has identified 3 polytechnics: GIET, Hisar Government Polytechnic, Sirsa and BPS Mahila Polytechnic, KG Kanpur Kalam, to set the example of how to integrate students with disabilities in mainstream technical and vocational education. State governments will reimburse the cost and uniform allowances and other incidental costs under formal and non-formal training programs. It is a scheme of Government of India for enhancing employment of persons with disabilities for any Indian in the age group of 18 to 55 years who has 40% or more disabilities. The corporation offers a scheme for financial assistance to parents' associations for mentally retarded persons. The objective of the scheme is to assist the needy disabled persons in procuring standard aids and appliances that can promote their physical and social rehabilitation and enhance their economic potential. The scheme is implemented through implementing agencies like voluntary organizations, national institutes under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Artificial Limb and Manufacturing Corporation and other NGOs. The implementing agencies are provided grant in aid for purchase, fabrication and distribution of aids and appliances. The scheme also provides under its ambit medical or surgical correction and intervention which is essential prior to fitment of aids and appliances. The scheme has assisted nearly 180 NGOs, that is non-governmental organizations. Central government provides for 100% assistance to the implementing agencies for meeting the expenditure under this scheme. It is a corporation that manufactures quality aids and appliances for the disabled at reasonable price. Modernization activities as well as expansion of production base are funded by the central government. Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment facilitates delivery of rehabilitation services to persons with disabilities by voluntary organizations through providing financial assistance and technical administrative support to promote vocational and professional opportunities, income generation, employment and placement opportunities. The voluntary organizations funded by the ministry are also running rehabilitation centers for leprosy cured persons, for manpower development in the field of mental retardation and cerebral palsy, and the establishment and development of special schools for the major areas of orthopedic, speech and hearing, visual and mental disability. 5 composite regional centers and 4 regional rehabilitation centers for spinal injured have been set up in different parts of the country. The CRCs aim at providing composite rehabilitation centers, creating infrastructure for manpower development and will generate awareness. The regional spinal injuries centers aim at providing comprehensive management and rehabilitation of spinally injured. Government of India provides funds for meeting recurring and non-recurring expenditure of these centers. This scheme has been launched for creating awareness campaign for prevention of occurrence of disabilities and rehabilitation of persons with disabilities in selected districts is being implemented through grant in aid assistance from the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. This campaign is planned to be implemented in all districts in the country. Comprehensive rehabilitation services have started through National Program of Rehabilitation for Persons with Disabilities, that is NPRPD, and District Disability Rehabilitation Center. This scheme aims to help the persons with disabilities in getting gainful employment either through its 41 special cells in regular employment exchanges or 47 special employment exchanges for the persons with disabilities. This is a program of the National Trust with specific objective to build up a pool of trained caregivers who may be hired on temporary or permanent basis by families needing it. It also provides employment opportunities to deserving people. It involves selection, orientation and training of eligible persons for professionals, caregiving, maintaining an agency for registration, placement, replacement of professional caregivers, maintaining close liaison with user families to determine their needs and suggest appropriate technologies and disbursement of financial assistance to the beneficiaries. This scheme was launched in March 2009 with the objective to enhance access to secondary education and to improve its quality. The implementation of the scheme started from 2009 and 10. It is envisaged to achieve an enrollment rate of 75% from 52.26% in 2005 and 6 at secondary stage of implementation of the scheme by providing a secondary school with a reasonable distance of any habitation. The other objectives include improving quality of education imparted at secondary level through making all secondary schools conform to prescribed norms, removing gender, socio-economic and disability barriers, providing universal access to secondary level education by 2017, that is by the end of 12th 5-year plan, and achieving universal retention by 2020. Important physical facilities provided under the scheme are additional classrooms, laboratories, libraries, art and crafts room, toilet blocks, drinking water provisions and residential hostels for teachers in remote areas. Implementation mechanism of the scheme is being implemented by the state government societies established for implementation of the scheme. The central share is released to the implementing agency directly. The applicable state share is also released to the implementing agency by the respective state governments. The scheme of Inclusive Education for Disabled at Secondary Stage has been launched from the year 2009 and 10. This scheme replaces the earlier scheme of Integrated Education for Disabled Children, that is IEDC, and provides assistance for the inclusive education of the disabled children in classes 9th to 12th. This scheme now comes under Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, that is RMSA, from 2013. The aim of this scheme is to enable all students with disabilities to pursue further 4 years of secondary schooling after completing 8 years of elementary schooling in an inclusive and enabling environment. The scheme covers all children studying at the secondary stage in government, local body, government aided schools with one or more disabilities as defined under the Persons with Disabilities Act 1995 and the National Trust Act 1999 in the classes 9th to 12th, namely blindness, low vision, leprosy cure, hearing impairment, locomotory disabilities, mental retardation, mental illness, autism and cerebral palsy, and many eventually cover speech impairment, learning disabilities. Girls with disabilities receive special focus to help them gain access to secondary schools as also to information and guidance for developing their potential. Setting up of model inclusive schools in every state is envisaged under the scheme. The school education department of the state governments, union territory administrations are the implementing agencies. They may involve NGOs having experience in the field of education of the disabled in the implementation of the scheme. Central assistance for all items covered in the scheme is on 100% basis. The state governments are only required to make provisions for scholarship of rupees 600 per disabled child per annum. The components of the scheme are student-oriented components such as medical and educational assessment, books and stationery, uniforms, transport allowance, reader allowance, stipend for girls, support services, assistive devices, boarding the lodge facilities, therapeutic services, teaching learning materials. The other components of this scheme include appointment of special education teachers, allowances for general teachers for teaching such children, teacher training, orientation of school administrators, establishment of resource room, providing barrier-free environment. A growing number of special devices are available for use by visually impaired persons. They vary in cost from only a few rupees to lakhs for a single device. Seldom does a device by itself make the difference in whether or not a visually impaired children can study or do a job. Devices do, however, provide added independence